Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Liberating the Queen, a podcast where we discuss amazing women in history that weren't in my history books. My goal for 2018 is to share what I have learned with all of you on the 15th of every month. I am Susie Moscow, and today is July 15th, 2018. This episode is brought to you by Flip 'em the Bird. When you don't have the words, let our gloves say it for you. You can visit us at www.flipemthebird.com. That's www.flipemthebird.com. Here at Liberating the Queen, we are always looking for new sponsors. Please reach out to Dan at liberatingthequeen.com for more on sales information and opportunities of sponsorship. Today we have a special guest. My son, Liam, is here to join us to talk about our next queen, I guess.
I wanted it to be someone from Nintendo, like Super Mario Brothers, or like Pokemon, or something like that.
I don't think Pokemon's Nintendo.
Pokemon is Nintendo. It's Game Freak too. Okay.
Okay.
But then we got Grace Brewster Murray.
Hold on. We are gonna talk about Grace Brewster Murray today, or as she's better known as Grace Hopper. She was a mathematician, a military leader, and a computer programmer. In previous episodes, we have talked about multiple women, but Grace really encompasses multiple roles. So we decided just to focus on Grace. She's known as Amazing Grace and the First Lady of Software. Grace became one of the first women to earn a PhD in mathematics from Yale University. When she retired from the U.S. Navy at age 79, she was the oldest officer servicing that time. She also appeared on the David Letterman show. It wasn't until 1997 the USS Hopper, a naval ship, was commissioned, and it was named for her honor. So everyone, if you could please stand attention as we salute this tremendous mind, Grace Hopper.
Grace Brewster Murray was born on December 9th, 1906 in New York City. From a young age, Grace had a curious and analytical mind. When she was 7, she decided to take apart every single alarm clock in the house to try to understand how they worked. When her mom found out, instead of punishing Grace, she set boundaries to only take apart one at a time. Grace's parents encouraged her curiosity in other ways too. Her mother, Mary Campbell von Horn Murray, had been very interested in math as a young woman, but hadn't been able to study anything beyond geometry because it was considered proper for a lady at the time. She made sure to encourage Grace in her interests and not to limit her based on her gender. Grace's father, Walter Fletcher Murray, wanted all of his children to be self-sufficient and made sure his 2 daughters and the same education and opportunities as his son, which was unusual for the early 2000th century. With this encouragement, she went on to study math and physics at Vassar and Yale.
And then Yale. Do you think it was fair that her mom couldn't study analytics, Liam?
No, it wasn't fair because, back then people didn't think like women weren't capable of doing stuff. So, yeah, it wasn't fair.
Do you think women are capable of doing math?
Yeah.
In 1928, she graduated from Vassar College with a BA in mathematics and physics and joined the Vassar facility. While an instructor, she continued her studies in mathematics at Yale University and earned an MA in 1930 and a PhD in 1934. She was one of 4 women in a doctoral program of 10 students and got her doctorate in mathematics was a rare accomplishment in its day. After graduating, Grace stayed at Vassar to teach math for the next 10 years before turning to the U.S. Navy. So, Liam, when it comes to computers and when it comes to Nintendo and Pokemon, do you think math is important in understanding some of those pieces?
Well, sort of, because, well, yeah, actually, yeah, because in Pokemon, you gotta, well, there's like an HP rate on a Pokemon when you're gonna catch it, and you need to think about, like, how much HP it has to be at to catch this certain type of Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
But in Mario, I don't really think so because it's really just like life skills. Like say there's a rock and you need to break it because you need to go through there to go do something, and so you use a hammer and you break that rock to go through.
But it's still critical thinking and it's still time based on Mario,
it's
right?
still timed.
Right.
Everything's timed. You gotta be
So
critical.
everything has math, it sounds like.
Sort of, but let's.
In the Navy. Quote, a ship in port is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. Sail out to the sea and do new things. End quote. Grace Hopper. While women had been allowed to serve in the Navy since the 1800s, they were limited to nursing and some administrative duties. With the start of World War II, the military became a little less particular about gender. In 1942, the Navy put together an all-female division called Waves, Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Services, giving women the opportunity to do more for their country during a time of great need.
She had to obtain an exemption in order to enlist, since she weighed in about 15 pounds below the required weight of 120 pounds. Despite what could have been a disadvantage, she graduated first in her class and was assigned the rank of lieutenant, junior grade.
She was immediately assigned to the programming staff for the Mark I computer, an electromechanical computer weighing in at over 10,000 pounds at Harvard University. Perseverance was one of the personality traits that made Grace such a great leader. On her arrival at Cruft Laboratory, she immediately encountered the Mark I computer. To her, it was an attractive gadget, similar to the alarm clocks of her youth. She could hardly wait to disassemble it and figure it out. Admiral Hopper became the 3rd person to program the Mark I. After World War II ended in 1945, Grace requested a transfer to the regular Navy, but her request was denied due to her age. She was 38 at the time. She was now completely hooked on computer programming, turning down a full professorship offer at Vassar to continue her work at Harvard as a research fellow under a Navy contract.
It was during this time that Grace and her team of associates were having a hard time figuring out what was causing a glitch. Finally, they discovered the source of the issue. A live month was stuck in one of the electrical switches controlling a circuit. Grace loved to tell the story about how they debugged the early computer by removing the moth, bringing the obscure engineering term into popular use in computer science. The term bug or debugger still echoes in the lingo of the computer programmers today.
She received the Naval Ordnance Developmental Award for her pioneering application programming success of the Mark I, Mark II, and Mark III computers. So, Liam, are you familiar with the term bug?
Yeah.
I think sometimes you say like there's a glitch.
Yeah, like a bug in the system.
Yeah. So, like when you've done your Minecraft movies and stuff like that, you've had to run through the code. And if the code stopped and it didn't work, that was a bug.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the term bug comes from. There was an actual moth in the computer circuit, and that was what was glitching. Isn't that cool?
Yes.
A true visionary, Admiral Hopper conceptualized how a much wider audience could use the computer if there were tools that were both programmer friendly and application friendly. In pursuit of her vision, she risked her career in 1949 to join the Eckert-Malalky Computer Corporation and provide businesses with computers. There she began yet another pioneering effort of the UNIVAC 1, Universal Automatic Computer 1, the first large-scale electronic digital computer. This became the second commercial computer produced in the United States. It was at the position that she created what is called a compiler. In compiler programming, a compiler is a program that transforms source code written from one computer language into another, usually less complex language. Hopper, her work helped make coding languages more practical and accessible, and she created the first compiler which translates source code from one language to another. This is important in today's world because, think about it now, Liam. I know that we talked about this a little bit earlier, but what we do, think about it like from an iPhone perspective. The hardware doesn't change. And Apple updates the hardware, but all the apps that come into it aren't exactly produced by Apple. So she helped lay down that foundation for computers to allow the hardware to be consistent everywhere. For example, in today's world, 90% of the transactions that are financial are built on COBOL, and that's a language that she helped form. So when you can look at Nintendo and look at all this other cool stuff, but without some of her foundational pieces, there wouldn't be a Steve Jobs or a Bill Gates.
Steve Jobs. Bill Gates.
Well, compilers are indispensable to programmers today. They were revolutionary at the time when computers were mainly used, as their name implies, for performing computations. Quote, "Nobody believed that I had a running compiler and nobody would even touch it. They told me computers could only be arithmetic," end quote. This was quoted by Grace Hopper. Eventually, her work there was recognized, and she was named the company's first director of automatic programming 2 years later.
Admiral Hopper believes that the major obstacle to computers in non-scientific and business applications was the death of programmers. For these far from user-friendly new machines, the key to opening up new worlds to computing, she knew, was the development and refinement of programming languages. Languages that could be understood and used by other people who were neither mathematics nor computer experts. It took several years to demonstrate that this idea was
feasible. Another quote by Grace Hopper, quote, "To me, programming is more than an important practical art. It is also a gigantic undertaking in the foundations of knowledge," end quote. So, Liam, what do you think she would think of computers today? I mean, she wanted them to be accessible. She wanted them to be user-friendly. And here you are, age 12, using computers every day. Do you think she'd be impressed?
Yeah, probably, like, kind of and kind of not, because, like, if she, like, think that people were, like being friends or, like, being nice to each other, that's kind of not true, because there's a lot of weirdos out there.
Yep,
doing a lot of stuff
Right.
on computers, like messing up with kids and all sorts of stuff. And
right. That's a good point.
Yeah, so she would kind of be, because you can use it for a lot of things, but kind of not, because there are people out there.
That's a good point. Pursuing her belief that computer programs could be written in English, Admiral Hopper moved forward with the development of UNIVAC of the BO compiler, later known as Flowmatic. It was designed to translate a language that could be used for typical business tasks like automatic billing and payroll calculation. Using Flowmatic, Admiral Hopper and her staff were able to make the UNIVAC 1 and 2 understand 20 statements in English. When she recommended that an entire programming language be developed using English words, however, she was told very quickly that she couldn't do this because computers didn't understand English. It was 3 years before her idea was finally accepted. She published her first compiler paper in 1952. Admiral Hopper actively participated in the first meetings to formulate specifications for a common business language. She was one of 2 technical advisors to creating COBOL. She was one of the people and part of the larger executive committees, and with several of her staff members, to define basic COBOL language design. The design was greatly influenced by Flowmatic. As one member of the Short Range Committee stated, Flowmatic was the only business-oriented programming language in use at that time. COBOL, or Common Business-Oriented Language, development started. Without Flowmatic, we probably wouldn't have COBOL. The first COBOL specifications appeared in 1959. Admiral Hopper devoted much time convincing business managers that English language compilers such as Flowmatic and COBOL were feasible. She participated in public demonstration to Sperry Corporation and RCA of COBOL compilers and the machine independence they provided. After her brief retirement from the Navy, Admiral Hopper led an effort to standardize COBOL and to persuade the entire Navy to use this high-level computer language. With her technical skills, she led her team to develop useful COBOL manuals and tools. With her speaking skills, she convinced managers that they should learn to use them. Another major effort in Admiral Hopper's life was the standardization of compilers under her direction. The Navy developed a set of programs and procedures for validating COBOL compilers. The concept of validation has had widespread impact on other programming languages and organizations. It eventually led to national and international standards and validation facilities for most programming languages. As I stated earlier in the podcast, it's attributed to 90% of financial transactions. So when you use your ATM, when you check out on an e-commerce site, there's COBOL behind there that's using that as a processor. COBOL is also attributed to about 80% of almost all web transactions, as there's some kind of foundation or some kind of call to COBOL somewhere. So it's very interesting that Grace, the one who championed this and the one who had the true belief that you didn't have to be a mathematician or really savvy in computers, she really was the first person to push the usability angle and really kind of see how big the computer world could get. We'll kick off this last segment with another quote from Grace Hopper. We're flooding people with information. We need to feed it through a processor. A human must turn information into intelligence or knowledge. We've tended to forget that. No computer will ever ask a new question. End quote.
Grace continued to work on COBOL as she directed the Navy programming language groups and was promoted to captain in 1973. Throughout the 70s, she pioneered work in designing and implementing technology standards for the U.S. Navy. The tests and standards she developed were later adopted by the Navy National Bureau of Standards, today called the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and helped to shape the future of programming.
Quote, humans are allergic to change. They love to say, we've always done it this way. I try to fight that. That's why I have a clock on my wall that runs counterclockwise. End quote. Grace Hopper. Grace tried to retire twice, in 1966 and 1971. But both times she was recalled to active duty indefinitely. She was promoted to Commodore in 1983, a title that was later renamed to Rear Admiral Lower Half, and finally retired for the last time in 1986 at the age of 80. At the time, she was the oldest active duty commissioned officer in the U.S. Navy. At her retirement, she was awarded the Defense Distinguished Service Medal, the highest non-combat award possible by the Department of Defense. She then worked as a consultant to Digital Equipment Corporation until her death in 1992. Jay Elliott, an author, quoted, "Grace Hopper appears to be all Navy, but when you reach inside, you find a pirate dying to be released," end quote. In the course of her lifetime, Grace Hopper was awarded 40 honorary degrees from universities around the world, along with numerous awards and honors, including first winner of Computer Science Man of the Year Award from the Data Processing Management Association in 1969, first person from the United States and first woman from any country to be made Distinguished Fellow of British Computer Society in 1973, first woman to receive the National Medal of Technology as an individual in 1991. Her nickname, as I said earlier, was Amazing Grace. She served as a role model and inspiration to women working in a variety of STEM fields today. Without Grace Hopper's work and influence of her ideas on the development of computer programming, the field of computer science would look very different today. Quote, "The most important thing I've accomplished, other than building the compiler, is training young people. They come to me, and say, 'Do you think that we can do this?' And I say, 'Try it.' And I back them up. They need that. I keep track of them as they get older, and I stir them up at intervals so they don't forget to take chances." End quote. Grace Hopper. She died in her sleep in Arlington, Virginia on January 1st, 1992. During her academic, industry, and military tenure, Rear Admiral Dr. Grace Murray Hopper, numerous talents were apparent. She had outstanding technical skills, was a whiz at marketing, repeatedly demonstrated her business and political acumen, and never gave up on her good ideas. During her lifetime as a leader in the field of software development concepts, she contributed to the transition from primitive programming techniques to the use of sophisticated compilers. She believed that we've always done it that way was not necessarily a good reason to continue to do so. So, Liam, I'm guessing while she was very innovative and very much about change, she would be impressed with how far computers have come, but maybe a little disappointed that no one was able to evolve the COBOL language or innovate on top of that. Do you think that's something you can take a look at and innovate on?
Yes.
You think you could be the next layer of COBOL engineering that's required?
I don't know about COBOL, but I'm thinking about Nintendo. Or
you're thinking about Nintendo.
Game Freak or Epic Games.
Right.
That one's a good one.
And we did go back and verify Nintendo's investment in Pokemon.
Yeah.
And that Liam was correct by saying there is
Pokemon,
a relationship between Nintendo, Game Freak, and Pokemon. Well, we want to thank everyone for joining Liberating the Queen. If you have any thoughts or feedback on the podcast, please reach out to us at contact@liberatingthequeen.com. Again, this episode is brought to you by Flip 'em the Bird. When you don't have the words, let our gloves say it for you.
That's a weird jingle.
That is a weird jingle.
I like it, though.
You can go to www.flipemthebird.com for more information. And thank you, Liam, for joining us today. Any last thoughts on Grace Hopper or what you learned?
Grace Hopper was a person who made computers and COBOL, which helped. And she did a lot of nice stuff for life. And we should all thank her, because without computers, we would probably all be dead, because that's all we ever do.
Well, I don't think we'd all be dead.
You're on your computer right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm just saying.
What are some other women you'd like to see from a male's perspective?
Probably like Sacagawea. I keep on asking
Yeah, you keep
you
on
to
asking
do
me
that.
for Sacagawea. What about what was her name? Ada.
Ada Lovelace.
You think she would be another good one?
I don't know. Well, she did invent a computer, so
She might be a good one.
yeah. Well,
Okay.
she made the code. She made the software.
Well, we'll see what's coming up next month. We want to thank everyone again, and we look forward to talking to everyone with our next episode, August 15th, 2018. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.